Hello, everyone. You're at the really useful show. We've recorded this a couple of weeks beforehand, but hopefully you're all having a nice time. We are some of the British Association for Local History team, and I'm going to introduce us all. We're all going to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to have a little chat about the crossovers and collaborations between local and family history. So I'm Joe. I'm a BALH trustee and member of the outreach team. Who'd like to introduce themselves? Maybe say a little bit. What do you all do for BALH?
I'll go first. So I'm Katherine. I'm the engagement fellow, and my job's basically to think of ways that we can broaden the audience and engage with more people and a broader range of people. My main job is as a historian. I run the YouTube channel Yorkshire's Hidden History. So most of what I do is actually making videos. And as a result, I've been making a lot of videos for the BALH. And that's one really exciting way which we're hoping to engage with a lot of new people by making these swanky new videos. So that's what I do.
Good. Just like this one. There you go. This is case in point. How about you, Adrian?
Hi, yep. So my name's Adrian Webb. I'm a trustee, and I'm also on one of the BLH committees under Susan Moore's guidance. And two of the things that we've been trying to do, two new things. COVID has stopped us from having sort of regional seminars, which is one of the things that we're just eager to get back to do, and when we're allowed to. And the first one was hoping to be in Taunton, and it was going to be all about unusual sources for local history. And so we're hoping that's going to be next year. And the other thing that I've been working on with Joe is the local history hour presentations, and Helen has also been helping us with that, writing some blogs. And they've been, it's been really, really nice that they've been so successful. And on some of our hours, we've had over 200 people sign in, and that's due to Joe's hard work, advertising the events and the digital team as well. So that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a chance to get down to Taunton, but in the meantime, the video lectures that we've had, the talks have been superb, and great work by the digital team, and fantastic speakers as well. We've had such a range of speakers from the academic world, from family historians, archivists, a librarian even. So a big range of people. We have an undertaker who's going to be joining us in the new year. So that's opening our range of speakers up quite a bit as well. He's a historian as well, not just some undertaker that we found. Anyway, Helen, how about you?
Well, I'm looking forward to this undertaker, actually. Sounds very interesting. Just had a wonderful conversation with a bloke in a cemetery the other day who was the cemetery manager. He too was a historian, but he hadn't realised it. And actually, I think that's true of a lot of people, isn't it? We all know an awful lot more than we think we know quite often. We all are specialists in our way. Okay, so I am the outreach officer for the BALH in Wales. And I'm also the county archivist of Ceredigion, which is the place that used to be Cardiganshire. So I spend a lot of time doing family history, a lot of time doing local history, and those two things do tend to go together in a very important way. So I'm looking forward to our chat this evening.
Brilliant. Excellent. Yeah. And really great work there. And you're doing a workshop, which we're not sure at what time have you got the time for the workshop yet? This is either
we
before
have no
or after
idea. We have no idea as yet, but it's going to be sometime on the Saturday. That's so it. If you're watching this, I hope you're coming along. And it's going to be on tracing your family history in Wales, which is inevitably going to be tracing your family and doing a bit of local history in Wales. Brilliant.
Excellent. Brilliant. So we've already had a few thoughts on family and local history from Helen, which is great. I've been thinking about my talk that I've done for the show, which again, I'm not sure if anyone's listened to it. If you have, I'm very sorry. If you haven't listened to it yet, there are lots better talks for you to listen to.
No, Joe, no. Listen, folks, listen to Joe.
Thank you, Helen. And go to Helen's workshop. But one of the things that I was really interested in my talk is thinking about how all family historians that I know are also local historians, often without realising it. And I think in the first sense, because we all have to, and I should say I'm a long-standing family historian, and I've recently started working as a freelance family historian doing work for others. But all family historians, I think, have to understand the records that exist for their ancestors' places. So what was made, where was it stored, particularly in particular archives, what has survived, and of course survival, especially as we look at much older records, can be quite patchy depending on what happened to them. And then in the second instance, because we need to think of local history as the context around which our ancestors lived, so particularly thinking about the culture, the societies, the economies around people. You know, people did different types of work, did different things in their spare time, depending on where they lived, different beliefs even, when we look at particular areas of the country that were, say, more Catholic, that have traditionally been more prone to Methodism. Katherine, I know, based in Yorkshire, is a big fan of rugby league. But I grew up in Essex, so we don't play rugby league in Essex, we play rugby union. But those things that would have affected our ancestors, if you're looking at the way that our ancestors would have spent time, hundreds of years ago. So that really interests me. So I don't know if anyone has any particular examples from maybe where you're based, or from your own family histories, things that you think where family historians really are local historians when we think about it. Yeah.
Well, I was actually going to turn it round, because at the moment I'm working with the University of Aberystwyth on a project about Aberystwyth in the Second World War. And what's coming out of that are a lot of really quite recent but absolutely wonderful bits of family history. What we found is, because people are engaging with the project and they're thinking about Aberystwyth, which, is a little town on the west coast, right in the middle of Wales, by the sea. And of course, I think it's Glasgow that has a motto: Glasgow makes people.
Yes.
People make Glasgow.
People make Glasgow.
Well,
yes.
That's true of everywhere, isn't it? And Aberystwyth has made its people. Its people have made Aberystwyth. And what we're getting are these stories of the people who stayed in Aberystwyth during the war, but whose friends and relations went away. And we're finding wonderful letters and pictures. There's two families in particular where the soldiers who went away, in fact, became prisoners of war. And we have the letters that their families wrote to them. And as I say, these have only recently come into the Record Office as a result of this particular local history project. But it's the most wonderful, poignant family history. And it's very, very modern. It's within living memory. But that doesn't mean to say it's not history. So I would just say, sometimes you're doing local history, but actually it's all about families, because it's people, isn't it, that make places. So unavoidably so. Well, there we are. Yeah.
I was going to say as well, it's quite surprising the demand there is for local history in family history circles. So I've got quite a lot of subscribers from America and Canada, and I'm thinking, what do they find interesting about Yorkshire and Australia and Tasmania and stuff? And what I've found is that a lot of them, they're saying, well, their ancestors have come from Yorkshire. I've loved being able to educate them, because there's lots of little things you find. So the region of Halifax in Canada, for example, and Nova Scotia, it's got an extremely high proportion of Yorkshire emigrants, and that was due to the economic and farming situation at the time in Yorkshire. And little things like that, they're so fascinating. They provide windows into the past and helping us really understand what went on. So even in that one little corner of the world, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Katherine. It's happened to us as well. There is a whole settlement in Ohio, which basically people from Cardiganshire went over in the 18th century. And all their descendants came back a couple of years ago, all congregated in a very, very tiny little village called Kilkennin, which is, tiny, very, very small. And they wanted to see houses, they wanted to see fields, they wanted to see the places that their ancestors had named their new settlement after. Because, people like to take a bit of home away with them, don't they? And then, you find the place names replicated all over the world. Welsh place names popping up everywhere, not just Patagonia, which is where, of course, they still speak Welsh. But yeah, it's lovely for people to come home either virtually or actually, when it's possible, and see where all those ancestors really lived. Although they always find it wetter than they imagined in Wales.
I'm very intrigued by what you've had to say, and of course, what you say resonates in the southwest where we are, you know, and it's really well known how many fishing fleets went across to Newfoundland, and like you say, you know, there's plenty of place names, and you know, there's a Taunton and a Bridgewater in Massachusetts, so there's all those local connections here. But what I was interested, what Joe said about the family historians not realising they're local historians, I could turn that on its head a little bit, Joe, for you. We've been doing a project for about the last 4 years on the parish of St Decumans, and what you mentioned earlier about gaps in records, and I think it's been basically been a bit of a hamper to people doing family history in that area, because some of the records are missing, and because of plague and civil war and things like that, records have disappeared. They may not even have been recorded, of course, and that's why they've not survived. But what we've actually found is, by undertaking this a study of basically life in the parish, that one of the fundamental stories that's come out is all of the interconnections between the families. And so we found ourselves basically reconstructing all the family groups, the main family groups who are part of this story. And I think we've probably reconstructed about 25 families. So I did a little experiment to see if I could find anybody who was interested in those particular families, see if there's any family historians. And I only managed to find 2. And those 2 families couldn't go as far back as what we'd found, what we've been able to reconstruct for the 17th and a little bit of the 16th century as well. So we've actually created the opportunity for 25 families to take their ancestry back quite a lot further. And also, of course, the interconnections, what we're really interested in from a business and sort of mercantile perspective, because the parish does have its own port, is the connection, and the connections with South Wales as well. Nothing as far as Aberystwyth, I'm afraid, but plenty of connections, you know, with sort of Swansea, Aberthaw, places like that. Yeah, and it's been really fascinating. It's really worthwhile.
That's fantastic. I think you all deserve a bit of congratulations for that work. That's fantastic. Well done. I mean, and that's really invaluable, isn't it? I think, and you've clearly enjoyed yourself quite a lot, but it gives then local history, but it gives a chance for family historians to move back through, which is fantastic. And I think we all try and help each other out, don't we, as much as possible. A bit on the immigration point, you know, you guys were talking about people that have left Britain. Some of my family immigrated into Britain around 100 years ago, and they were Dutch. And I, particularly my mum and other members of the family, and now me, have done a lot of research on where they lived, and they were peat diggers, so they went to particular areas for work, and that research has been really interesting, but I've never been able to trace them back because of the language barrier, particularly into the Netherlands. And I recently met someone from the Netherlands who was doing some research on their ancestors who'd come over to Britain to work as peat diggers, and it came up in conversation, and I could tell them the kind of places that they might find their ancestors and a little bit about the conditions around which they worked. And in return, so that's the kind of local history thing, but then in return, looking the other way, they were able to say, well, actually, the street that my ancestors and your ancestors lived on was the same street for about a year, and some records that I have in Dutch, copies of that I couldn't read, they translated for me, so which is really interesting. So that's been lovely. So yes, this idea that you can think about local history in that way, but really in quite a broad scope. You know, when we say local history, we don't just mean necessarily focusing in on a place, but lots of different places, and how, yeah, we can all really help each other out. So yeah, fantastic. Good. We've had quite a big chat here. Has anyone got anything else they'd like to chip in? Has anyone been inspired? I've been really interested in hearing all your stories. So that's been great. I hope everyone that's listened to this has enjoyed as well.
To be honest, Joe, I think probably between us we could talk for hours, couldn't we, on all the different projects
we could, Adrian. I was just about to start waxing lyrical about the lead miners, because I'm actually in one of their cottages. I mean, it's mine now, but it was theirs. Yeah, family history. People coming up from Devon and Cornwall to the lead mines in this village, and building these houses and becoming Welsh people. So it's really interesting, yeah, how people move about, how people make the landscape.
I'm going to ask you a question now. Have you had any lead miners from the Mendips come to your area, or has it just been Devon and Cornwall?
I think it's just been Devon and Cornwall, because I think very much in the same way that this area had an exodus to South Wales, what happened was, first of all, a few people came speculatively, and then they invited all their friends and relations to come. So you tend to get movements of whole small communities. But no, I think it's mostly, as I say, communities from specific areas that moved en masse. So all the young men, and then they would find themselves a nice lady friend here. Sometimes they brought their wives with them. But the house next door to me was in fact built by a very, very young couple who came, I think, from Peter Tavy.
Okay.
And then, you know, and 2 generations later, they are in effect Welsh. So.
Well, because I get a new research idea every 5 minutes, but something which I'd love to do is explore more connections between Wales and Yorkshire, because I've done a bit of work on the early medieval period, which is obviously a very long time ago, and you know, there's a few interesting bits there, but one of the things I love about local history is how it kind of makes us realise that we do have a lot in common. So I think Yorkshire and Wales in particular, I mean, both love brass bands, you know, both love like heavy industry, both got, you know, down to earth working people, both like rugby, albeit different forms, you know, both have lots of sheep. There's a lot there, and I think projects like looking at the connections between different places, they really can help build stronger relationships between communities.
It rains a lot in both places as well. There's a bit of a linguistic difference, but apart from that, yeah.
Well, you say that. Well, actually, so the Brythonic language, which was spoken all over Britain, and this is going, you know, really long way back.
Way back, yes, yeah.
Perhaps not useful for family history, but there's a lot of words which have survived in English, and so although we may think Welsh and English are completely different languages, they do have a shared common ancestor.
Oh, they do, yeah. Well, it's yeah.
In Yorkshire, we've got Otley Shevin. Now, Shevin, you'll recognise, is a variation on Cefn. And, you know, we've got a Penigent. Pen means hill, so that's in lots of different places. So even looking at place names, now those elements in the names have survived for a really long time. And I think it's remarkable that actually we can say, you know, even linguistically, there's still the shared heritage.
Oh, yeah. It's like Avon and Avon. Avon is the Welsh for a river. River Avon. And pen, of course, pen in Wales means the top of something. So I've always been fascinated by the word penguin, which is a white head. Yes. And penguins don't have white heads. I don't think that particular word works that way.
Good. Okay, I think on penguins, I'm going to close this.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Joe. I may have just lowered the tone there. I'm very, very sorry.
No, I feel like we can't bring it up to that level again. It won't get better than penguins, so we'll have to close it.